This is Big Ideas from the ABC.
We are going to use some of Louise Hawson's photos just to kind of as a little jump-off point so we can talk about your output. And
sure.
One of the photos that I selected was this one, mainly because for me, trains, I always think of electronic music when I see trains, because so many electronic artists have been inspired by the sound of the rhythm that trains make, and also, from Kraftwerk to, there's just a whole bunch of them. What's your kind of relationship with trains? And
I don't use public transport in Berlin, and I'm not on trains a lot. But, however, I love the sound of trains. Even though I have to say that I like lawnmowers a little better. So for me, like, lawnmowers are always like this, fascinating, like, ultimately, like, gripping, like, really deeply emotionally connected to that kind of sound, like, it's kind of the sound of a lawnmower of, like, 3 neighbors away, like 3 gardens away, sort of. This kind of, like, modulated sound. It's, like, very peculiar. It's like its own thing, sort of. But trains are, that would be my second choice, obviously, like. No, seriously, but I always, wanted to have, like, I don't know, in Europe or Germany, maybe in particular, you don't think in terms of houses, you don't would say something like, yeah, I always wanted a house, near like train tracks or something, but an apartment, maybe, like a small apartment near like a train track, where I would have this sound, but more in the distance.
Uh-huh.
But there are, in fact, opportunities to live in Berlin right next to train tracks, seriously, like literally, like I once, there was like an open house kind of thing, like looking at an apartment, which like a housing project almost, like it was very designed in a way like we're just cubes, like literally like the apartments were like just cubes with huge glass sides, like functioning as windows, obviously. So that was all great, and they were even affordable. But the S-Bahn, which is effectively a train, like a subway running overground, so to speak, was running like right next to it. So
it's strange that
there was my chance, but that was too close to the rail tracks,
Yeah, you can't really turn them off.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Kraftwerk before because for me it's really interesting that you make the sort of music you make, and yet I've read that Kraftwerk were basically of no influence to you at all because you weren't listening to them as a teenager or when you first started making music.
Yeah, sure. That's exactly the case. The thing is, like, I was introduced here as an electronic artist, but I'm not electronic yet. I'm still human, So, and that's where the Kraftwerk comparisons fall flat because they're already on the way of to the post-human state, maybe. No, seriously, but no, Kraftwerk musically was never much of an influence to me as a listener. I don't know, like electronic music is not a big thing for me and has not been in the past as a listener. And as a producer, I work with software, obviously. Like I've spent a lot of time in front of like screens and working with interfaces and so on. But listening, if I go out, see a band play, or music, it's always a band I see, like in a small venue or something.
Yeah. And the whole synthesizer thing and drum machines, all of that kind of was of no fascination, because so many people who I guess work in the sorts of fields of music that you work in are so, they fetishize that whole synthesizer, electronic gadgetry, but that's not your thing at all, really, is it?
No, I can understand it though, like, I mean, synthesizers, they're fascinating to people, like, even though they have a little bit of like a loaded history, I would say, because they come from this, time where music was still like almost like an arcane kind of science, by people in like lab coats, and then they were used by guys in fur coats, stuff like that, It's not my world, like both is not. Yeah, so I had electronic sounds around me through video games a lot, like the Commodore 64 sound chip, that was the soundtrack to my life for years and years, but still it didn't influence me musically at all.
What was the first sort of music that you heard that you that really turned you on or made you think, I want to try this?
Oh, I want to try this? Like literally, like I want to be like this?
Or
I don't
just
know.
I want to make music, or I want to make sound, or noises. Do you remember as a teenager thinking?
I remember, as a teenager, I was not thinking about that. I was really seriously just a listener, you know, just enjoying music. Go see. I mean, music already saved my life, sort of. You know, I come from this like tiny village, you know, like 2,000 people, like no gas station, no post office, no sidewalk or something almost, you know. So like music is already, I'm not even sure if anybody in that village plays a musical instrument, you know.
Wow.
So it's seriously like already kind of like a lifeline into like a different world or something, you know. So, but still, to be like a music producer or anything like that was still very far away, so at that time.
Sure.
And then I joined, you know, I decided to become a music producer, I guess, right at the time when it became affordable to do so without, you know, having to hang out in rehearsal spaces or with these synthesizer guys, you know, who, for some strange reason in Europe, they're always sitting in these like really dimly lit rooms under these kind of like camouflage nets from the army. I don't know why, that was like a big thing, sort of. I've seen a couple of spaces like that, and I was always, oh no, you know.
Didn't appeal to you at all?
No.
Let's move on to another photo. This one in particular, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it right. Is it Lipschitzallee? Is that the name of the station? You're not sure,
Let me check. Oh, Lipschitzallee.
Uh-huh. Are you familiar with this station?
No.
Not at all.
I can Google it, you know.
That's great. What I liked about this photo is this kind of contrast that it has, which is a lot of Louise Hawson's photos. There's a lot of contrast in her photos, and this is obviously underground and overground. You know, and I wanted to ask you about the contrast in your own music, because it seems to me a major theme in your music is that contrast between the human element, the organic sort of element, and then the very kind of processed electronic element. And your latest album with the very human voices, but the music behind it. So is that a sort of driving force to kind of match those two or find a middle ground?
Not exactly middle ground, but it's definitely like a challenge, or I kind of, I'm trying to prove the point, you know, that I can come up with an, you know, emotional type of music that it just is. You know, that just speaks for itself, sort of. And that's probably new in my new sound after 2010. Now there's not even like a ticket to the Oval Debate Club necessary. You know? You can just listen, you know, you can just, you know. And if I would have to add like a marketing bullet point, you know, that's obviously something I prepared. You know, I would say I have turned, you know, my music from like a, you know, lean forward to a lean back experience or something.
I like that.
Stuff like that. So, it is really just listen, you know, music is, I mean, it was pretty unlikely that I would ever end up making music with a capital M, you know. That was not interesting to me for many, many years, because I was trying to prove other points, you know. But if you really look closely, maybe this, what people see as, quote, you know, I'm quoting someone, this love letter to music or something, was maybe even written like a much longer time ago than what people think when they listen to my new stuff, which is, in a way, very musical, you know, but just sit down and try to play a cover version, you know. So it's getting difficult. Like it's getting more complex, and everything is less reliable in a way. The closer you get to it, especially on musical terms, you know.
That might be a nice thing to know, that no one will ever do a cover of it.
I don't know. Sure. I mean, I was kind of trying to suggest, with especially the shorter tracks, like those which are just like musical themes. There's many tracks on, you know, my 2010 double album. There's 50 of those. But then over the course of the next records, I've always included these like short themes. They're like 30 seconds to like a minute, 20 seconds, something like that. And I did them in a way. I was trying to suggest that they come across as music you might already know from somewhere, but you cannot really put your finger on. You know, it might be from like a movie or like from a video game you played, but it's not like that at all. You know, but still, it should come across as music that is played by a person somewhere. Like people should envision a person sitting somewhere playing that, what they hear, on some kind of futuristic instrument maybe, you know, but it's definitely an instrument, definitely like a real person. Whereas in reality, it's completely simulated and programmed and stuff.
Yeah. How did the idea come about for the South American vocalist? Like, why did you pick South America as the... Because you hadn't really... I mean, you weren't a listener to Brazilian music, I'd read, so it wasn't like an obvious choice for you. Where did that idea come from?
It was suggested to me by the Goethe Institute. They had this fantastic idea, which I would have never come up with myself in years, you know. So they said, hey, are you interested to work with South American musicians and vocalists? You know, and I was, yeah, let's see, you know. And then there was an actual, almost like a, you know, casting session, audition kind of thing, you know. And there were over like 120 people applying for this, you know. And I was like getting into this project more and more and was like, oh wow, this is like really interesting. And I picked, obviously, like fantastic musicians, you know, but also sometimes like going for the more kind of unlikely choice, you know. I mean, I didn't go for the Michael Jackson imitator, you know, who at the same time was an opera singer. Same guy. You know, he sent in like a video of himself standing next to a grand piano and reciting some German. That's probably why he applied, you know, some kind of Schubert lead or something, you know. And then there was this other video of him, like filmed on an iPhone, like really shaking all the time. And he was on a tiny stage doing this kind of Michael Jackson thing.
I can't believe
I still regret that.
I know. I'm regretting it. That was your first trip to Brazil?
Yes.
So
it was, the recording sessions were happening in Brazil. For 10 days, we recorded in 3 shifts. You know, I'm German after all. You know, I have to. So 3 shifts and you know, 30 plus tracks or something. And it was just amazing how effortlessly these like really young musicians they went into the music and they could, even though you cannot really count actually these tracks. You know, they sound like almost like a kind of like a laptop version of like a jazz trio or something. But like as I said, like the closer you get or try to get to it on musical terms, like the less sense it seems to make. And still they manage to kind of work around that or just ignore that or just feel it or something. It's like a cliche, of course, you know. But they did it. It's amazing. And the range of musicians is like so huge. It's like ranging from like, you know, folk singers, you know, to opera, to like an indie rock kind of guy or some kind of like really interesting laptop songwriter guy, you know, and what came out was just amazing.
Can you imagine living in Brazil and working there? Like,
I don't know, Brazil in particular might be like a stretch, you know, because I'm not sure. Berlin is great.
Does it inspire you creatively as a city, like to live there? Do the surroundings kind of...
Yeah, surroundings in the sense of my own apartment are really important to me, you know. And my apartment, I mean, didn't bring a picture, you know. It looks like a furniture catalog, you know. Like and that's kind of the challenge for myself, like to make it look like as if nobody would live there actually, but I'm still there, you know. But that makes me feel, you know, I don't like stuff on shelves, for example. All these books, and I have a couple of those, you know. But even so much more video games, for example. Right. But then they have all this like almost screaming at you that you haven't read, played, finished all of those, maybe not even one of them. You know, it's too much for me, so everything is behind like...
The minimalist look.
Yeah, it's very minimalist. But there's tons of stuff there, you know, moving boxes. I don't know how big moving boxes are here. My move, 170 moving boxes. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Let's move on to another photo. I particularly like this photo just because when I first started talking to you by email and I sent you some of the photos, I loved your reaction, which was, yeah, you know, these are great photos, but they make Berlin look a lot more interesting than it actually is.
Than my Berlin actually is, you know. but I try to, keep it deliberately boring, So I don't know what to make of this though. Like, what does it even say? Like, Berlin
I don't love you.
doesn't love you. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, Berlin is not openly hostile, but it's not exactly like I mean, Berlin is very known for, the people are really grumpy. Like, they're like really like this, It's not so much, but it's authentic, It's not have a nice day. I mean, the have a nice day thing, that entered the German language 2 years ago. And I'm still not sure if we'll stay, if it's here to stay, But have a nice day is kind of a habit now. But
Yeah.
You
don't use
I can
it.
intimidate people in a way that they won't. Wish me the nice day. I go and stare people down in a store or something. No.
But you were 22 when you moved to Berlin?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So was it sort of the call of the big city? Was that the...
No.
No, not at all?
No. I was just studying, and I picked like a kind of not really exotic, but also not very popular like flavor of studies. Like, it was like a media theory. And you could, get this kind of education only in a couple places, like really obscure German cities and Berlin. So I was, okay, it's Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
But, the first project that I could have only realized in Berlin, and only in Berlin, maybe like 10 years later, And I was not, even though I came from this village, I don't know, it's just the way I am, I guess. Like, the only difference I noticed at first, it's like, it's much harder to get parking. It was like, oh shit, like, there's no parking here. And then I started realizing there's more to a city than I thought or something,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, are you going to talk about Berlin and music and me? Because there's definitely something I got to mention, typical thing at that time, early, mid-90s, electronic, techno, aka techno explosion,
Mm-hmm.
in Europe and Berlin in particular. And I was going to bed at 9 p.m.,
Yeah.
So triumphantly waking up the next morning, 6:30 or something, working on music while everybody else was wasting their lives in clubs or something.
It just didn't appeal to you at all, that whole thing?
To me, this kind of club music culture is more a category, like music becomes something much more similar to drinks or light, or,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not music in how I would define it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different thing, it's more,
You've always kind of been, I guess, the outsider in that sense. Even though a lot of people who would listen to music like that would also enjoy your music, there's something about you sort of bucking against that all the time. Obviously not on purpose, but it's just you. But because I even think about the way that you use software to make music, but your music is very repetitive, whereas that's very much a kind of theme through clubbing music, but electronic music as well. It's all based on loops. It's all very repetitive, whereas your music is sort of the antithesis of that.
It is now. I mean, out of sheer necessity, I did loop-based music in the very beginning, but I was on a student budget, and I couldn't afford anything else than the prosumer sampler, the rack-mounted sampler, 12-bit, like the 16-bit was out of question, it was too expensive,
Mm-hmm.
So I had like a total of, I don't know, 30 seconds sampling time.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a fraction of what anybody has today on his phone, So I had to work with loops to, create this sound over time, to make those songs. And I'm calling them songs, like I was not thinking in terms of tracks, of my own music in terms of tracks, I was always after kind of more emotional, songs. And they were quite deliberate and linear, they were totally non-experimental. It was a form of songwriting, if you will.
Mm. I mean, those parameters were kind of, they were just forced on you, I guess. But I've read about other projects you've done where you've actually set yourself some parameters, and I'm just wondering, do you like the challenge of making music where you have I know you don't like the word concept, but perhaps setting your own parameters around a project of I'll only do it this way or I'll only use this?
I think it's because I'm systematic. I kind of try to, identify like a certain path to my next upcoming in the making musical statement, And if after I have identified that path, I pursue it and I focus on a certain, in the case of the last few releases, like instrument or approach, and I try to get as much out of it as I can. So that doesn't necessarily happen to, do it differently from everybody else. It's really just my own way. Like I work, I pursue that path, as I said, even it might take me a bit longer to get there. For example, I had this like years-long break between 2000, I don't know, early 2000s and then 2010. And that was really just because I developed that skill set, where I had to figure out how I actually want to do it. And that was important to me, and I stuck to it, Maybe the sleeping in the car part wasn't so great, but I pursued this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you like the challenge, I guess.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. So what would if someone set you a challenge, like, can you make an album without using a computer at all? How would that strike you? Would that pointless, or would it be interesting?
Yeah.
Just kind of
these days, it would be too much work to actually get hold of equipment. Like, also not even for recording it. Too much work. Then I would have to rent some kind of outboard gear or some kind of like external recorder or something. I wouldn't even know. I can figure it out, but without a computer, it's that's not exactly what I'm about. People live without computers to prove a point, I guess.
Yeah.
And I could do the same, but it's already happening somewhere right now, so I don't have to do it or something. It's just kind of.
Do you like it? Do you like spending time in front of the computer and that whole? Or do you look forward to a time where there's another way of doing it, where you don't have to look at a screen?
I think the screen will be around for a while. Even only now, I have a setup that will keep me busy for many years, and that's the kind of typical setup of like a generic, almost a little bit old-fashioned user interface with a mouse and keyboard and a big screen and so on. No, touch surfaces and so on. Yeah, and that will keep me busy for so long. So I'm not even thinking about the next iteration of that. Or something.
Sure. This is another photo I picked, mainly because I love the look of the woman, but also because of the radio in it.
Okay.
And it just made me think, so many people who make music and record labels spend a lot of time thinking about what radio will play off the album, or, do we have a radio-friendly track on this? I imagine you just never give that any thought at all. Would that be right?
No, but there's other criteria. I see what you mean. Radio is not a big deal in Europe anyway, or getting airplay on a radio. I'm not even sure. There's like all sorts of, internet radio stations, or if you count streaming media in general as a category, to something that is along the lines of at least the most important criteria, the same as radio was at some point or something, then yeah, we could say that Spotify is something like a radio, similar to that. But I'm not, influenced by that, or I don't use this as a kind of formal, criteria to do my music in a certain way. But as I said, there's other criteria you have to keep in mind. Or you make your own, as I tried to do with this aforementioned double album. I had this, 2-disc thing, and the disc A was like a regular record, with tracks of varying lengths, and then there was the disc B that had 50 short themes on it, something like that.
The other reason I picked this photo was because it kind of reminded me of Radio Free Europe because of the old style
Right.
transistors. And obviously today is the 24th anniversary of the Berlin Wall sort of demise. Can you think back to that day and what that was like for you? Hearing that was...
I was still in the village.
Mm-hmm.
So, no relevance in a way. You know, it was on TV.
Yep. But obviously it was...
I didn't watch TV, so...
You didn't watch TV?
It was on the, it was on the radio in the morning. It's just, I don't know. It was like, oh yeah, Berlin.
Okay, let's move on. This photo here, I guess it's just one of those typical, anyone who goes to Berlin comes back with a photo of a punk with a mohawk. It's kind of like that ubiquitous image of Berlin somehow.
If the demographic of my neighborhood would be like the 55-year-old lawyer, you know, with a 24-year-old wife and 3 kids or something, with the SUV parked in front, that's my neighborhood. So I don't really... So this is... Yeah, it's
Not your Berlin.
I try to, you know, go through where I've last seen a scene like this. What's on the right half? Oh yeah, sure. On the right, there's whole entire districts, you know, with that kind of atmosphere, for sure. And it's really great. Like it has this like it is in a way like a city that is, or districts, parts of the city at least, that are actually they reflect like how people like to live there. You know, they do these kind of like whatever kind of designs, and there's all sorts of like different concepts, I guess you might call it, like how to live in a city. It's very diverse.
Yep.
You know, like there's all sorts of different style apartments of all like on all, how you can live by yourself with people and so on. Because I guess it's also because there was never an outside of Berlin. Before the wall came down, there was just, you know, East German territory, and now there's not much more than that, you know. I think it has developed in a sense of suburbs, you know, but that's not so much my thing. So.
Sure. Going back to the punk image, how important was that punk ethos in terms of just being able to make music without necessarily being technically trained? Was that a part of your thinking? Like, had you sort of heard, is that where your impetus to make music came from? That whole sense that you don't have to really be a trained musician to kind of make music.
Sure, but in another way, you had to already have the, let's say, confidence or expertise even, you know, to even see that you could use, say, like in Europe they were called home computers, like an Atari ST, for example, for making music and not just for spreadsheets or your homework or something, or playing games, you know. So that is not exactly creating something out of nothing, but instead you have to have some knowledge and insight into, at least you have to have a certain level of awareness that this is the next step, sort of. Whereas punk, I'm not so good with music, and even less good with, you know, music history, I guess. But as far as I remember, like, wasn't punk like some form of rock?
Absolutely, yeah.
Just more simple or something?
yeah, absolutely. But I guess...
So the difference is like the watershed moment of the computer entering the game, if you will, was like a much bigger step than like creating punk out of rock, you know, in my opinion.
In my opinion too. Obviously the sophistication of the music, but I think I'm talking more about the thought to go, hey, I've never done music, but I'm just going to give it a go. So whether that's using a guitar or a computer just to generate noise is part of that thinking.
Definitely,
I'll
yeah,
just do
I
it.
think so. It was more like who else would do it or something. It is not so much like I had anybody to fight against. It was really just me and this, in the beginning, like group of friends. We were just having this computer thing, and then we were just trying it out and playing along and playing with it. But it was not like I never thought anything I would produce in those days would ever or could ever or would ever have to compete with like real music that's out there. Like I was so far from even only one person that played in a band or something. So there was no reference point. There was just this music world, that, or kind of this notion or impression of music that came into my world via a music magazine that also was kind of this lifeline into like a different world. So I think it's still around today. So that was really important at the time.
Was there a moment where you sort of thought, this has become my full-time, this is what I'm focusing on completely? Where you went, this is, a career is probably not the right word, but that sense of this is what I'm going to do for the
there's
future.
multiple steps in this, I guess. Step one was like this one, I cannot really date it right now, I would have to think a little longer, but this one like Christmas dinner at home with my parents, who, even though I have done music for years, had no idea what I was doing there. And I brought home these like CDs, they came out on this American label, and they were like, oh wow, great. Step two was probably something like entering like a country as part of a tour or a concert, and in the field occupation actually filling in musician. It's not very long ago. So, and I'm not sure even now if that was a great choice, because now it's on record or something. So I never wanted to, be a composer or a musician or something, because that seemed to be, especially in the early days, that seemed to be from a different world, and I wanted to be kind of I wanted to be occupied, let's say, with different questions altogether, or base my music on different distinctions, not be the typical musician type person, or even author person. I mean, my early stuff had a lot to do with, not actually rejecting authorship, but, questioning the entire thing of these, author types, you might call them, who always answer the same old interview question with the same old answers, or something, oh yeah, my next album will be about this and that, And instead, I wanted to create a music that's emotionally, engaging, but at the same time, genuinely, new without being experimental. Because these guys are crazy, right? Like, experimental music was something I absolutely did not want to be seen spending too much time in. This was something I absolutely wanted to avoid. So therefore, in the first interviews, I always said, Oval is pop, it's pop music. You just have to do some little adjustment in your head, but it's pop, you will see. But experimental, it was such a hard time, Like, I was, at the time, there were record labels, obviously, still today. But I was sending out those demos. And of course, lots of those came back. So, there's something wrong with the music, send it again, and stuff like that. It was this kind of time,
You just said then, you didn't want to necessarily be known as a musician, but in the end, that's what you're known as, and you are a composer.
Yeah, that's kind of the tragedy.
Now.
That's why I'm the tragic figure of this entire thing.
But you're enjoying it, right? You're enjoying the ride, at least.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. This is the last photo I've selected. And I just like the whole yuppies go home, but that's a bit of a...
That's a very recent thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Berlin always, I think Berlin always has this, it's a proletarian city, in a way, not demographically, not strictly speaking, but maybe even that. But I wouldn't be able to prove that, or I don't have any proof for that. But, there's a certain kind of down-to-earthness of everything. So what happened since the wall came down, lots of, people and money, which is good, obviously, came into, and talent, of course, lots of great, and huge international community and so on. Many Australians, probably, in Berlin, But of course, it comes with a certain,
Price tag.
gentrification kind of thing, obviously this kind of more expensive and so on. So that's what these guys try to express with these graffiti.
So it's still quite it's a strong movement at the moment, isn't it? To try and shut that down a bit.
It makes the news. I have no idea how, because it's in a different district from mine. So I don't have like firsthand. I have never seen any of these, but they seem to exist. Maybe it's always the same. They're taking different pictures of it or making it look differently. I don't know. Maybe it's just one guy. I have no idea.
But as you say, because we lots of Sydneysiders and friends are living in Berlin because it seemed like the mecca of the European world where you could still get a cheap place to work and live. There are lots of artists working. There's lots of collaboration.
Absolutely, for my new album that came out 3 weeks ago, I did this music video. And not only was the entire cast and crew completely international, I found them in days. And I put up an ad for the acting parts in that music video, and that ad was only up for 2.5 days or something. Then I had to take it down. There were 120 people applying for this, And it's for that it's great, for sure,
We're going to open it up to questions from the audience in just a minute. So there's a microphone here. If anyone's got a question, you feel free to come down in a second. I loved a quote that I read from you recently, which was, "It's not enough to create. You have to know why you're doing it."
I don't know. It's just my thing. There's probably lots of other musicians that have this whatever works kind of approach, or just throw it out there, or productivity over evaluation criteria or whatever,
Yeah.
It's a little sad that critique and evaluation criteria as a whole, they're kind of out the window now. It's kind of just productivity over everything else, just put out as much content out there, something will stick, And of course, everybody out there, he or she knows what he or she's doing, apparently. It's really just, or should. No. I don't think of myself as an exception so much. It's much more, maybe it's just because I take so long to finish a record and then I come up with this really elaborate reason why or something. Whereas in fact I was only playing video games, who knows?
So you're not thinking about it during the process? Or when you're formulating a record, you're not thinking about why you're doing it?
It's always the same reason, and it has never changed. It needs to be a music that can captivate or kind of really emotionally is emotionally gripping, and can surprise me without being just random, I guess. And the important part is not so much of being able to put your finger on why you're doing this every single day. Mm-hmm. It is also obviously about the quality of the outcome, And I have used so many different, because obviously I'm doing this for a number of years, and these number of years is even counts even more in music productivity terms, or in internet time, or however you might measure it, because it's like these 15 plus years is like a long time, like the equipment I was using in the beginning, equipment I'm using now, there's like such a huge, you cannot even, I wouldn't be able to do like a track in the old style today, like in other words, like for example, record like a 94 Discount version 2.0 without some really serious reverse engineering, because this equipment, it's still in my basement, but like technically it's like a different world, So, but I think my personal conclusion is more like, no matter what kind of equipment I have in front of me, I kind of managed to achieve the same kind of atmosphere, I guess. Even though today, if you listen to my music, my new sound since 2010, it sounds like so different. So that's more what I'm focusing on. That it maintains this kind of like continuity, even though I don't have like a white paper, like with bullet points, like how my music should be, but it's more like a feeling.
Yeah. The rhythms become much more important for you.
They were always
the
rhythms were always important. There was just not the tech out there that would allow me to use like a solution that I was happy with. So I don't like drum machines. They just come from a different world. And they're not flexible enough. And I don't like pattern-based beats,
Yeah.
And I don't like quantized sound. So it is only since, 3 years that I could technically try something like these rhythmic things I'm doing today, But they were always important. I was always looking for, and of course, these kind of CD clicks, on the early recordings, they were kind of my take on rhythm, in a way, And even looking back today, if I could do it all over again, I would still not add a bass drum, even though that would probably mean I could have flown in today with my own helicopter or something, So, yeah.
Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask Markus?
Markus, when you're actually creating your music, do you have any visual ideas about how you want a film clip to be, or is that something that happens after that music has finished in your head?
The music is not in my head in the first place. Like, it's not that I'm getting up in the morning and feel inspired, and then I just have this cup of green tea, and then I sit down at my piano and play. That would be more like 1713, not 2013. It's like, it's pretty complex. It's feeding data into modules and making them do music that creates an atmosphere that is completely non-technical, even though what is actually happening on a technical level, or strictly speaking, is completely just data manipulation, So you were asking about the images. There is a very visual element to my music, but it's only in my head, and I don't really share it. And it doesn't guide me, but these images or these kind of scenes that play out in my head only come when I'm listening to not the final result, because I never listen to my records once they're out, but it's when I'm in the process, because these like new themes, as I call them, they're improvisations. So I play, there's actually a lot to play. So all these years, I developed, or I was working on skills, actual skills, not just listening to music, or, it was really to get the tech aspect down was kind of one thing, but to be actually able to play this in the way it sounds, that was the real challenge, So these images, when I'm recording these improvisations, and most of them require like a pretty detailed setup, you know, to make this instrument or virtual instrument sound as it sounds at all, you know. It's almost like a Wes Anderson movie or something. You have this like tiny, like little, super detailed little props and stuff, and you arrange this world, and you create, then you set up the lighting and stuff, and then you shoot the scene, you know. But I have to rehearse for like a long time to get it right, in quotation marks. And right means that there's actually some scene playing out in my head, sort of. But these scenes, they're always like really very absurd little vignettes of something, you know. We tried to capture some of them in the video, the music video I talked about just a few minutes ago. But the most important thing is to actually be able to play it myself, even though I'm just a beginner. I would say this new sound is kind of like an attempt at an answer to the, I don't know, questions of this era of music production, which I would call the hyperreal era, you know. So the instruments emulated in software, they kind of surpass the original instrument they were modeled after, you know. At least they surpass the real thing, if you will, in key areas, you know. And then adding like lots of new expressive categories that, of course, are not existing in a real piano or drum kit or whatever, you know. So what I've come up with is really just a first attempt. And again, I try to kind of toe the line between, you know, experimental and then too easy going. And then that's what I came up with for now.
Anyone else like to ask a question?
In the live set, drums, acoustic sounding drums play an important role. Have you considered playing with a jazz drummer who takes over a part of the role of what Oval is live, and that you would be adding the other elements to that?
Oh, you mean like add like additional drum elements to what the real person is actually playing?
No,
or I'm adding other sounds?
Yeah, I was thinking if there were a real drummer playing the drum beats of the music and you were to play the other bits. Has that occurred to you, or would that be a possibility?
To me, it seems too obvious. You know, it's kind of the typical strategic thing to do, like put up a guy on the stage and people will like it more because it's like more live and like a real person and so on. And then again, I have to find that guy. Like, where should I find that guy? I don't know anyone, you know, in music. I have a few music friends, you know, and I think one of them is a drummer. But he's busy, you know, and I'm busy, and so I don't want to bother anyone with that kind of stuff. That seems too obvious in a way, you know, like, oh yeah, we put something live on stage and then twice the people will come, you know, or something. I really don't know, like, I'm pretty busy with getting my music in a way that it sounds like, and it's not even, like some tracks I played last night, they may be like 10% finished or something, so I would want to put a real person through this, you know.
Did you want to ask a question?
Hi, Markus, thanks. I am curious because I probably haven't listened to your stuff since you know, the processing kind of era to what you're doing now, and maybe what you were saying earlier, that in that kind of era you were sort of, you know, trying to make a point that these sounds that you were using and the way you constructed them are pop, effectively pop music, and now you're using sounds like guitars and drums that are very, you know, the referent is very clear, and it does, you know, even with singers and things, you know, it's very clear that it is a kind of pop music in, you know, almost a conventional sense. I'm kind of wondering what that, if you could maybe describe some of that process of getting into that. Why did you decide to shift into that direction.
Oh, you mean like kind of falling behind my bold claims of the earlier years, like selling out, in other words?
Perhaps.
Yeah, you know, like I will always have the last laugh, you know, because it wouldn't be an Oval record when it wouldn't be like a lot different from what people think it is. I mean, it may sound, and maybe the thing with the cover version is kind of an indicator, you know. Okay, I can tell a story. There was this one thing supposed to happen, and it actually happened, on TV, on nationwide TV in Germany, you know. I was supposed to play a showcase with a, not mentioning any names, you know, but with a renowned, you know, improv ensemble, you know, lots of like great musicians and so on. And they've been doing this for many, many years. So the curator of that event had this idea that it should not only be a showcase of like all these, you know, people playing their own sets, one after another, but how about have people collaborate? It's always so great that the curators love this, you know, like why don't you just on stage, you know, live, so on. All right, so I went to a different district of Berlin to meet the main guy in this ensemble, and I brought some of these musical themes I was telling you about. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, because you said you only know the old stuff, but they're, as I said, like they're like seemingly really simple little tunes, you know. They almost sound like from some kind of like evergreen or like old movie or some weird kind of, you as I said, like the intention was to make them sound as if it's music you already know, but you cannot put your finger on. They're very melodic and very easy, very short. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna bring these. And they're gonna play cover versions, why not? You know, because they're so good, you know, they can do this, no problem. So we had this meeting, and he was almost bored because it seemed too easy of a challenge, you know. He's like, yeah, sure, come on. Like, what kind of cover version do you want? And I said, oh, can I wish for like a style or something? Like, can I wish for anything? You know, that would be great. Let me think. Do you know, like, I hope nobody's offended here, but you know, in Germany there's these like bands that play in churches, you know, like a church band, but they're kind of like a rock band, but they always have like a really bad, sorry if I offended you, but they have like a really bad drummer. There's always like, you all know what I mean, and it always comes with this weird kind of sound, and they're like, just not really exactly very groovy. And I said, how about that kind of style? And then he said, yeah, no, I'm not so sure about that, but yeah, we can do everything, you know, no problem, you know. And I said, yeah, and there's this other thing, how about sounding like a circus band? And he was, yeah, that's it. We're gonna do this. We got absolutely no problem. You got it, you know. Come back in a week, you have everything is going to be done. Great. So he canceled the second meeting, and the showcase was approaching. 3 days to the TV recording, I called him up because I hadn't heard from him for days. So I was like, okay, how are the cover versions doing? And he was like, yeah, you know, you haven't given me any script, you know, like any score. We don't have the score, we need the score. And I said, yeah, come on, I'm not, you know, like you are the expert, you know, I'm just some guy with a computer, you know, so. And he said, yeah, this is gonna be tough. So I have to wing it somehow, you know, like and the one guy, you know, his wife just had a baby, you know, and the other guy is sick in the hospital, you know. This is going to be really, you're putting us under a lot of pressure here, you know. And I said, I had no idea, you know, because you said it was so easy to do that. The day of the TV recording. And that was in a different city. We all had to get there. And they had like 5 cameras. So it was like a pretty big thing. You know, they even had like Steadicam moving on the stage, which was really funny because during my set, there was nothing to show. It was just me doing my little thing at the computer, and then there was the Steadicam guy like going around me like all the time. And then there came the collaboration part. Yeah, it didn't go so well. What I'm trying to say is, as I have indicated before, like the closer you get to this music, the more confused you will be. And that's the thing with The Last Laugh. It only seems as if it is some kind of jazz or something. You know, it is, I understand, and first of all, I'm not claiming for myself to be always like ahead of anyone in any way, ever, you know, and I never have, you know. I'm just doing my stuff, and that's it. And I can do it as well as I can, and I'm going all the way, 100%. That's all I can do, and I never want to imply that I'm doing anything better than anyone else, you know. But the thing with the jazz aesthetic, I'm aware that it seems like almost retro or kind of like weirdly, you know, like conventional even. But in my opinion, we have reached a point where, you know, any musical aesthetic is really just like a flavor. It's really just like a design. It's more, I don't know if you're familiar with video games, like a certain look, like cell shaded, for example. You can give it a certain look. If anybody, one of you is like a graphic designer, you know, you can make it look gritty or something, you know. But using certain kind of elements, components, instruments, styles, genres, to me, at least, there's no progressive or reactionary anymore, any longer. Instead, I would say it is all about sound over time, you know, provide people with something interesting, something enjoyable. And I think these tracks that are on the later records, and especially the new ones, which make it even easier, you know, for people to get into, because there's these, you know, beautiful voices together with those tracks. I don't know, like, as I said, like, I don't think that I have done anything better than anyone else, but I think it is a type of music that you will, at some point, figure out that the things are not quite as they seem, and there's like a meta level to everything that happens in that music. And how did it come about? Like, for example, the drum sounds. I just like acoustic drums as a listener. And there's just more. And these drum machines are just, it's not so much to it. They might be effective, but they're not, there's no sound.
Thanks, Markus. I think we might have to end it there, but put your hands together for Markus.
Thank you.